I enjoy the cafe community because it welcomes everybody and instills love in every single person and every single cup of coffee that you serve.
Why Rose Street? Rose Street was always the perfect escape for me, especially when I was in the throne of school and just always going back and forth from activity to activity, and then suddenly I had this one spot where I could just go and escape and be with my friends and not do my homework under the guise of doing my homework, and connect with other musicians, connect with a greater community, and really find an identity within the city.
So I started with Rose Street Cafe from the beginning. We had a group of friends and I that were involved at University Christian Church, and we dreamt up this idea together. The church had a event that happened once a month called Grounds for Thought Coffee House, and so the idea of that was to gather people who are interested in music, arts, and just a fun event to get together once a month. It was in the basement of the church before any of the renovations had happened here. And it was culturally relevant at the time, in the 90s and early 2000s, and we saw a need for that kind of interaction to be much more on the main street, much more every day, not just music or event kind of geared, even though that's remained a huge part of what it's been, but also just in the day in, day out, a place for friends to meet, strangers to meet each other, ideas to be shared in the community, and maybe needs that were under the surface in the community to be given a spotlight, to be given a conversation place, and it's really what it's become here, I think.
The cafe, as we first started out, we were a bunch of young punks, so we were just, like trying all sorts of different things. Sometimes we would have low music nights, sometimes we would have low attendance, sometimes we'd have, just the building would be packed with people. One of the things that we saw was that the church itself would become the cafe, and the cafe would become the church. And I think I see a lot of that happening, where people are knowing the cafe and the church as one, but not in a negative connotation, not in a way that puts people off. And it's that outreach that we've always wanted, just happening more and more until it just becomes one-on-one with each other.
Without us really even planning it, it's already becoming so much more than a church with a cafe or a cafe with a church. It's a community center, really. Out of that, I started to see the unique opportunities that a cafe gives us through the arts, to be engaged in community and conversation, and to provide a space to let people who are just growing in their artistic gifts to have an outlet for poets to read their poetry, and for artists to display their art, and musicians to play their music, and I think that is a blessing to them. It's a blessing to the people who come and enjoy their art, but I think it brings a certain energy just to the community as well, and I'm glad that we get to be a part of that.
Some of the first nights that we ever had shows in the sanctuary were really special times for me, because I always have worked Saturday nights, so I've always been involved with the music. But usually it would be in the cafe, and it would kind of just be very loud and noisy. And it had, shows have a feel, so it had a certain feel to it, which certainly wasn't bad, but it was just a certain kind of feel. And then we had the first couple shows we had in the sanctuary, the Happy Maladies played, and Adam played, just a couple of bands that were really close to our hearts and really close to this space. And so then we started having shows in here, and it was just a totally different thing,
It took a different form than what we originally had imagined. Lots of things we just couldn't imagine that Rose Street has become. But other things that's really lived out the vision that we really had for it, in terms of being just a source in the community for kind of a meeting of ideas and music and art, and just the organizing that's happened just in the whole Heights community around UC. Just seeing those things that have happened in the doors here has been part of what the original vision was of the group of us that came together.
The cafe has always been about the community, and it's always been about the volunteers, and it's never been really staff driven. Like the staff is required to run it, but it's always been about the people, and I hope that always continues on and never loses sight of that.
There are the inevitable ups and downs, but I think this place is always pushing for growth and the next frontier. And I think that's going to push into the next 2 years and decade and forever, hopefully, with regards to that and with regards to the music space that it offers and just the community space.